Welcome, everyone, to the Showboys podcast. I'll say it again. This is the one place where for every 30 minutes of television you watch, we will talk for one whole hour about it. So we're here. We're back. It's Monday. House of the Dragon episode 4 was last night. Always excited to watch this show. Hence why we're doing a campaign series on it.
Yes.
And this episode, King of the Narrow Sea, I really think they're all aimed at Daemon. I always feel like they're aimed at Daemon.
It does seem that way. Yeah, it does. I'd have to go through the other ones, but I remember Rogue Prince was one.
I mean,
What's
I always
up
feel
with
like they
them
have
not
at least
putting
two
the titles
main.
up? Why don't they put the titles up on Sunday nights?
They don't want to give away anything. Same reason they don't do the like preview of the next episode or the after credit stuff. So I think there's, suppressing that until the next day. I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with it too, but they also got to keep that going though, because when we watched Game of Thrones, we got to season 8, there were major spoilers in the thumbnails and the titles, and
it's just the premiere though.
Yeah,
they can't really. It's not, basically they're saying it's not our fault after tonight you got spoilers, not on us. You know what I mean? Yeah. Mike 5 years later, bless his heart, shouldn't have any reason to be ruined by Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that's true. I think there's a time limit on spoilers.
Yeah.
If we're talking Mass Effect 1 spoilers, sorry. You cannot complain about something 10 years ago, spoiling it for you.
No, yeah, definitely. There's no complaints. It's just part of common nerd pop culture at some point. It's just baked in. Whether it's Darth Vader being Luke's father.
Right.
Or, Game of Thrones is many things.
Right.
Some things are just larger than the show you're putting on, and you can't contain it.
Yeah.
So at least they try, and they have a method to it. So I do like that because it really is just I watch the episode on Sunday night. I'm in, I'm out, I'm done. No nonsense. And then the next day I get to digest it again with all the other peripherals around it.
Yeah, this is the first episode that I didn't get to watch twice, I think. Maybe there was another one I didn't get to watch twice, but yeah.
Last one.
Totally bummed because I felt like there was a lot in here that I probably missed the first go around, especially towards the beginning. So
yeah, Castle Intrigue is dialed up to 11 on this episode.
Yeah.
They didn't really dance around it. We just got a flyby of a dragon. They toned Dragon down to 1 and Castle Intrigue up to 11. And more widely, just the nightlife of King's Landing. Apparently that whole city is just slapping all night long because that opening, that shot where they first leave the keep and it's just the city bumping.
Yeah.
Every street's got lights on it. It's just is the city sleep at all? Probably not. If you think about it, in that setting, why would anyone stop and go to bed?
Especially down there. What do they call that? The Silk Road or what? No, that's not the Silk Road. It's something close to that though, isn't it?
It's Silk Alley or
Silk Alley. Yeah. Something. I mean, that to me feels like the red light district of King's Landing, right? So it's popping all the time. It was cool to see that because at least to my knowledge, and we just rewatched the show, I don't think we've ever seen the nightlife of King's Landing's red light district. So it was really cool to see it.
Yeah, and it's what this show really kind of goes to do, and they kind of have to because we're only really hanging out in 3 locales. So we always got stories of they allude to it in Game of Thrones, whether it's the brothel house during the day with Littlefinger, not necessarily the prime time. And there's some things, but not to this degree, which is really awesome because we're really hanging out in King's Landing for most of this series.
Right. And I got to be honest, I thought I was concerned, and we talked about in episode 0 that we maybe had a little bit of concern that it wouldn't be as intricate as Game of Thrones, but I think it's doing a good job for being just in King's Landing. There's a lot going on, and I really, really, really like it. And there's a lot of big stuff that happens in this episode that I didn't see coming, certainly. And it was just a fun episode, dude. I through the maybe first half of this, I was like, okay, let's get we get it. You're in a brothel. We get it. Okay, we get it. But by the end of the episode, everything that it's set up in the brothel, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, like this is what I want out of like this palace intrigue, like trying to find out if she's a maiden or not. Like it's just that's the kind of cool stuff that I want out of the show. So for them to do this so early on in the show, I really like it. I'm really, really liking it. This is
Yeah,
probably up there for one of my favorite episodes so far.
yeah, no, it's really fantastic, and it's a really really well crafted episode, and it just shows like what lengths they go to one tell stories in this very long timeline that are important, right? That move the plot for later on when the story actually begins. I'm starting to treat this as like our
Prologue.
prologue
Yeah.
to what we're eventually going to see. And they just take a lot of care to, craft a story that's one, like intriguing, cool, entertaining, visually pleasing, and then tie it all up at the end of the episode where you're like, oh,
Yeah.
that makes like that advanced everything so far.
Right.
Because you're right, like halfway through the episode, you're like, where are we going with this? Like,
Yeah.
like I get this is important and like there's a lot of stuff kind of like popping off here, but what's the punchline? And there's some really good punchlines in this one.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
good.
I think the way that this episode is structured has been my favorite so far, where it's like really batshit crazy in the beginning, and then a lot of stuff pops off at the end that's pertaining to that stuff in the beginning. The end of the episode pulled everything together for me for this. Like if that wasn't there, this would probably would have been one of my least favorite episodes, just because
Right.
the beginning part is just like, yeah, like we get it. Like let's go. Like yeah, teenager going to the red light district. Yeah, we get it.
There's some big moves that this triggers, but then also like heavy character development or reinforcement of our like kind of big four.
Yeah.
Here 4.5. Otto, he's like a honorable mention when it comes to main characters.
I think I don't even know if he's an honorable mention. I think he's in there, I think. He has to be, because all of this has been set
number
in
5
motion.
though, for sure.
Maybe number 5, but all of this has really been set in motion by him specifically. So he's maybe character development wise, he's number 5, but as far as importance to the plot, I think he's higher up. And I think he's about to get much higher up.
Yeah, I just can't peg him for like he's smart and knows what he's doing versus like he's kind of an idiot sometimes. Like he's kind of like a very naive Littlefinger. Like Littlefinger would kind of cover his Littlefinger did cover his tracks much better than Otto does. Like Otto's kind of it's almost like I don't know, I kind of picture it like a very analog very verbatim analog kind of like intrigue player versus like in Game of Thrones we have a lot of characters that are like many layers deep playing the game. He's kind of just like, I'm gonna move this piece here and I'm not really gonna think about what that means.
Well,
it advances my point.
I think that might be the difference in characters there. Like Littlefinger's a lowborn brothel owner who's gotta think of every possible scenario, whereas Otto has been hand to the king to do 2 different kings, they said in this episode. So he must have been Jaehaerys' king towards the end as well. And that once you're in that position of power, your thinking probably doesn't need to be maybe it needs to be as deep, but it's not as deep because of the position of power that you're in. You know what I mean? You've got the ability to move these pieces so easily that you don't need to think 10 steps ahead where you would if you were a lowborn brothel owner trying to break into the Game of Thrones,
Yeah, he's definitely complacent in his power. Like it's just kind of there for him to use, and he just kind of uses it very haphazardly compared to what we're kind of used to out of some other like top tier Game of Thrones palace intrigue players. So I think that's just the thing that kind of to me lacks in his character, but also as part of his character. Like he's fat on the palace intrigue
Yeah.
moves. He's got like the good hand dealt to him, and he's just kind of like playing these real big cards.
Yep.
We're used to people like kind of sleight of hand pulling cards out of nowhere as their only card to play.
Yeah, that's a good
And
way to
playing
put
it
it for
well.
sure. Yeah.
So just based on the Alicent alone and Damon coming back here, last episode we were 3 years ahead, so like we're maybe like 4 years, and we even get that later from Damon, which I do like that they just toss in the one line like 4 years later. It's 4 years
Right.
since Damon has seen Rhaenyra, basically.
Yeah.
So no big time jump, which I liked. How we're really kind of piggybacking off of
I
the
mean,
last bit
it's
where
a
things
decent
happened.
time jump. It didn't
Less than a
go up,
year.
which has been the trend over the episodes, is it keeps going up the time jump.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like the kid's born. She's not. Allison isn't pregnant anymore. The
She went
baby's
from super
born
pregnant to like a 4-month-old or something
to
like
like a
that.
4 month
six
old. Yeah,
month
that's a
old.
good way. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so we open here, which is a cool scene in general, and this is this like matching ceremony where all the lords are basically giving their bid to why they should marry Rhaenyra, and she gets a choice in the matter,
Yeah.
based on last episode. But there is like just a ton of little tidbits in here that are kind of
Yeah.
throwaway, but also just fun for world building. I'm pretty sure it is Dorne that is the one off kingdom, because the first guy is like, he like held off like some Dorne incursions or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think Dorne is that outlier group
I think
that's
it
just
might
kind of
be.
like, a
Yeah.
pest. They're not formally part of the kingdoms.
Right. Yeah, I really like this scene. I had to actually, because I had like started the episode and then maybe went and got a drink or something and missed the first couple seconds, and I had to go back because the first guy that's up there trying to propose to Rhaenyra or whatever they're doing, I could have swore just by looking at him, the way he moved, the way he talked, that he was going to be a Frey. Because I was like,
Mm.
dude, he even walks like Walter Frey. Like, it has to be a Frey. So I had to rewind because they actually do say his name
Yep.
right out the gate, and it's Dondarrion, which is cool because that's another, Beric, same house as Beric from the original show. So that was really cool. But just, man, they should have really played up that Frey thing because that guy's just got the movements down. He's got the hair down. Like, he was
Was
really vibing
was he
with
the
the
one that
Frey.
was Lord over the Riverlands? I thought they
Yes.
named yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So same kind of area, same
Right.
same MO basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's funny. He's basically way too old because she makes a snarky comment like, was my grandmother that like as beautiful
Yeah.
and like half a century ago, just to be followed up by a child, in her eyes, maybe
Right.
he's like a strong 9. She's 17 at this
No,
point,
he's got to
18,
be like at least 12. He's got to
12.
be at least 12. Yeah, I have a 9-year-old, so
Yeah.
he's got to
So
be
I
at
guess
least like 12.
yeah, and I wanted to point out she's 18, 18 or 17 in this episode in terms of timeline, because she starts off at 14. We're at somewhat like 4 years later, so she's 18,
Yeah.
which is
Do
old
you?
for her for this time, like to not be married and to not get on with this part of her duty.
Yeah. Do you feel like? And I don't want to bring this up again, but I really have to. And we really should wait until we see the new actresses. But do you feel like they should have just stuck with these two and like put some freaking makeup on them to make them look older? Because these two, I love these two, to be honest with you. Their chemistry is really good together. I think Rhaenyra is a phenomenal actress. She does great in
Yeah,
all of her scenes.
yeah,
So it
she
just
owns
sucks
everything
knowing
she's in.
she does. And it just sucks knowing that it's
She overpowers
probably,
Matt. She overpowers Damon.
yeah, they have
Matt
great
Smith.
chemistry. They have
Yes.
really good chemistry as well. So it just sucks knowing that if I were to guess, we're going to get a big time jump after this next episode. I think this would probably be the right point to
5 or
propel.
6. Yeah.
To propel.
They said midway, so either we're gonna get a 5th with them still, or
yeah, we definitely are getting a 5th with them still. I
yeah,
think
because I want
after
to see her marry Laenor, and
right.
I want to see this actress continue that story with Laenor and
Yeah.
kind of get more Laenor, because I really liked him from episode 3.
Yeah, so did I.
So I hope, yeah, I'm hoping, I'm pretty sure 5.
And
will
I'm
still be
hoping that
with this
it's
group.
it's like a proper royal wedding, because we haven't seen a royal wedding since
Yeah.
Joffrey, right?
Yep.
So it'd be
Well,
really cool to see how the customs have changed a little bit
yeah.
over the years.
Probably more grand,
Oh,
right?
for sure.
The 2-year-old birthday party was better than
Yeah.
everything every other party.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's important to make that a big grand wedding because she is still very much heir to the throne, and Viserys is not really faltering on. If anything, he's doubling down. He keeps
Yeah.
kind of through his wavering and like softness at times and literally rotting at times.
Yeah.
He keeps doubling down on this concept, which I do like about his
Yeah.
character.
Yeah. I do too. But this episode specifically really broke open the him and Allison's relationship currently. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Where I mean, they have a very awkward sex scene with him, and that's where you see that he's all like, he's got cuts all over him, like the ones that we saw in that first episode that were festering, if you will. He's got those
Yeah.
like all over his back now.
Yeah.
So, and she is just dead weight in the bed, like not into it whatsoever. So it's kind of a stark contrast from what we saw in the earlier seasons, where it seemed like she was kind of vibing with him a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Now we get 2 kids in, and she's like, she's done with it.
Yeah, and that really is, and this is one of the fun parts about the episode, and that whole sequence mid episode is the difference between where she is at in her 18-year-old life and where Rhaenyra is at in her 18-year-old life. I don't know if they necessarily envy each other, but they definitely aren't very pleased with their lot in life. But like one definitely is more duty sworn, so puts on the face of like, I'm doing my duty, but underneath she's like, this sucks. Whereas the other one's like, this sucks, screw duty.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I liked seeing them come back together a little bit in this episode as well.
Yeah.
Because they have been so standoffish with each other the past couple episodes. It was cool to see them kind of come back together. And that's not going to last very long, so it's cool to get those scenes while they do. But yeah, I do really like the contrast they have going with Rhaenyra and Alicent, and just seeing, like, I think Rhaenyra even says something like, "Oh, it must be awful to be locked away in a castle, popping out babies or whatever," and it's exactly what Alicent is going through. You know,
she has a look in her eye like, "Yep, that's me."
Yeah, that's me. So it was cool to see them come back together, and
she played that as both like, you just simultaneously insulted me, but also really made me think about what I'm doing with my life.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And that was a well played out dialogue there.
Yeah.
No, yeah, there was a lot of good kind of turning points in this episode versus the last 3.
For sure. Yeah.
Where we kind of are coming full circle on some things, doubling down on others, stirring the pot on a few other things, and Cole. Well, Rhaenyra and Cole, they're sailing back right after that ceremony. I assume that's at Dragonstone, and basically they're heading back King's Landing. She threw in the towel. She's like, "Nope, not going to happen." So then we get dragon screech in the distance, and it's Daemon. Nearly knocks the boat over, and her off.
Total Daemon move, right?
Yep.
I do really like the reason that they leave. So the reason is that 12-year-old boy and another guy kind of get into it during his interaction with Rhaenyra. And I don't remember. I know that those 2 families maybe weren't mentioned in the original series, but the way that I understand it is they're like feuding family, like they hate each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he called him a cunt. Called the 12-year-old a cunt. So I really like that, because while we see a lot of that in the main series, there's not a lot of the feuding family stuff going on here. Not yet. I think we're going to get more
peacetime
as we
feuds.
go on. Yeah, peacetime feuds. But these 2 families apparently like absolutely hate each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope we get more of that. I also really like that we see the Baratheon guy again, and I can't remember his name, Volan Baratheon or something. It's cool to see him sitting up there with Rhaenyra, and I just like that scene as a whole. But now to the boat. Is it like not the most dick thing to do to fly in and whip your niece into the side of the boat with your weird shaped dragon as you're just sailing
Well,
by?
yeah. Does he know it's her on the boat and like her boat?
I
Maybe,
mean, maybe not, but
maybe not.
it's
Is he
got a
just being?
ginormous dragon head on the front of it. I don't know how you could not think that
They
she
all
is on that
do.
boat. That's
Yeah,
true. That's true.
he's just. It's kind of like in Top Gun when Maverick does the flyby
It
on
does
the
the
tower.
flyby. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like just doing this thing. Sorry if
Yeah.
I upset anyone, but it is what it is. I'm Damon Targaryen.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, Rhaenyra still like completely okay that she hit her head. More so, just happy to see Damon. And the idea she's going to see Damon for the first time in 4 years. And this is a cool scene, and it kind of is like the way they have the castle set up and these shots of the castle really just reminds me of like Harry Potter and Hogwarts, because like we get everyone kind of like rushing to the Great Hall, and we get all these like little whispers of like it's Damon,
Yeah.
stepstones, right? And it's just like the
Yeah.
chatter, like Damon's back, and it's just the talk of the keep. Um, Basically everyone's there, like Kingsguard lined up in front of him because they don't know what Damon's gonna do. Um, the king's waiting for him, the hand's waiting for him, everyone, and she's even like mingled into the crowd because she kind of just got back too, and she knows her dad's probably pissed off too at the same time, so she's not really here to make a scene. But the other, and basically Damon comes back. He's wearing a crown of, I think, like crab legs or something. I'm not,
It
or
looked
like
yeah.
driftwood
It looked
something.
like maybe driftwood. Yeah. Yeah. I really like this scene a lot.
It's
He's got a
great.
haircut. I think he looks so much better with the haircut, if I
Oh,
might
true.
say. But I like how he just rolls up and the Kingsguard instantly draw their swords, and the main dude puts it at his chest and he just holds out the axe and he's like melted into the chair and then just drops it.
He's like
I
added to the throne.
Yeah, added to the throne. So yeah, I love this scene. The thing that really stuck out to me, and I'm a freaking sword guy. Blackfire in this scene. I think it might be black. I can't tell if it's sheathed in this scene or if it's actually a black blade,
Hmm.
but it looks like it might be a black blade, which is really, really cool. Now it's supposed to be Valyrian steel, so I don't know. We've never seen any black Valyrian steel swords before. But yeah, just dig that sword, man. Like I think I probably lean heavier towards Damon's Dark Sister.
Yeah,
It's just a cooler
yeah.
looking sword. But yeah, it was cool to see the black blade because I don't remember it being black in the first time that we saw it, like the first episode.
Maybe. Yeah.
I mean, it could have been sheath, but I mean, it would have had to be one hell of a skinny sheath because it looked like when he turns it
Right.
sideways, it's very skinny. So I don't know. I
Maybe he
have to
has it
look up
painted
pictures.
for like
Yeah,
decorative purposes.
decorative purposes. Yeah,
To man's like it should be black, so we're just gonna paint it.
and let's
Oh,
let's go over the throne cutting situation real quick.
hmm.
Because if you were like sitting on that throne constantly, you're the king of Westeros and it's cutting you every time you sit on it, would you like fucking throw a blanket or like something down on it?
Yeah, but what kind of look is that? Like king
I
sitting on a
mean,
blankie
you're the
throne?
king. Have somebody sew a freaking blanket to your back so nobody can see it. I mean, they built you a whole freaking sculpture of old Valyria in your room. I'm sure they could figure out how to keep you safe from
Yeah.
cutting yourself on the throne.
Well, actually, he's we don't see him sit on it this entire episode. He's always
Right.
standing in front of it. So I think he's kind of thrown in the towel in terms of sitting on this
Yeah, it's
thing.
just like this is not doing it anymore, bro.
Yeah,
Not doing it.
and he kind of needs to stand because he really needs to like work on like exerting his power because he's weak otherwise. So he just needs to give up sitting on this thing.
Yeah, not
It's not
worth
up
it.
for him. He
Yeah.
just he's it's kind of more of a um like a king regent. Like he's not like the actual king. He's just the standing king. Whereas like
Right.
he doesn't actually sit at the throne. He just kind of stands there and is king.
Yeah.
Um, he's not the sitting king. He's the standing king.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't sit on it anymore. I wouldn't.
I
He's
wouldn't either.
blistering
Like
back there.
he's blistering all over. He's missing 2 fingers. Like, dude,
Actually
if you
missing
ever
this
need a
time.
hint, yeah, if you ever need a hint that you should not sit on that chair anymore, I think probably by the 37th cut on your back that festered into a boil, that you
Yeah.
probably be like, yeah, just gonna stand.
Yeah.
Just gonna stand.
I like the so we go from like pageantry because Rhaenyra kind of says she's done with this pageantry from what she was just doing on Dragonstone with the matching ceremony. Well, this scene in hindsight with Damon here is all pageantry. He presents himself to the king, the sword, gives him the crown, says, "Hey, the stepstones are yours. I'm here to serve my king." And the king's like, "Welcome back, brother." It's all very facadal, right?
Yeah.
It's just a ceremony. And to me, it's just pageantry. They're going from one to the other. But the difference with this one is like, what's Damon really up to? And Rhaenyra is a little bit more curious about his true intentions of like, why are you back? As they talk about later, where the king, as gullible as he is just like, "Oh, my brother, welcome back. I'm so happy you're here." And he realizes later as well how easily like things just get over on him. Um,
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think he learns. I I think that he's genuinely maybe excited to see Damon again and
yeah, for
see that
sure.
the stepstone stuff is taken care of because
He likes to
that's
have a
been like
win. He's
yeah,
tired of just like all this nonsense.
yeah, and that's been a thorn in his side for since the beginning of the show, really. Maybe in the first scene of the show, it's discussed. So I think he's excited, but it doesn't take Damon very long to show that he's still a freaking unhinged maniac, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
he's
for
not
sure.
any different whatsoever because of the situation. Arguably, he might be worse because
Yep.
now he has a win as well that he can
Yep.
kind of embrace. So, yeah, I thought it was cool that he said that they're, like, calling him the king of
The narrow
what was it?
sea.
The Narrow Sea.
Yep.
So and I also really like that they're like, "Who's holding the stepstones?" And he just says, like, "We left all the slaughtered bodies out or hung them
2000,
up." Yeah.
2000 bodies just like staked to the sand for
Right.
anyone that might pass by.
Yeah. So, yeah,
It should have been like we literally melted them to just rock. There's nothing there anymore.
nothing. Yeah, there's nothing to even get. And it's what even seeing the stepstones, it's odd that there's just nothing there, you know what I mean? You would think there was some sort of
I mean, they're kind of just like volcanic
structure.
isles that kind of,
Yeah,
they're not,
but
there isn't much there. I mean,
right, but is it just their proximity in the Narrow Sea? That's why they're so important where they're
yeah, because
at?
they're the stepstones between the two continents. Like
Yeah.
basically like they're probably close enough to where you don't need a large ship to get between the two continents. So like pirates can skip through there. Also, it's a place with like caves. It's volcanic. Pirates can stash there. They can hide there. So basically, it's just like somewhere that's not open sea for just activity to happen.
Yeah.
So that's originally what was happening. The pirates were hanging out there and just like plundering ships as they
Right.
went by, and they could easily get in and out and hide, um, and also dock and all those sorts of things. So it's very much like the Caribbean, and why pirates were so much happening there. Same
Yeah.
kind of reason.
Yeah,
And there's nowhere to really build like a castle or like why any reason people would live there to kind of like patrol them. So they're just kind of like no man's land in the ocean.
yeah. I think that as the episodes go on, and I said this early on, I love Damon. And I know that a lot of people hated his casting. They
Heck
hated that
no,
he was playing Damon. This
Matt
dude is
Smith.
freaking now, granted, I don't know anything about Damon from the books, right? He might be playing him totally different. But from what I see, as someone that did not read the books, he is playing this part freaking fantastic. So he is a great casting for the show. And just to settle anything, I watched the third episode of Lord of the Rings. No, there's not even a comparison to be drawn between these two shows, bro. They're not even on the same level. I'm sorry, maybe Lord of the Rings fans will change my mind on that, but not that show is very incredibly slow. Like I don't know what's going on. It's just very very slow.
It's I mean it's for families or kids if anything, and this is the very much mature adult.
Right.
Not just for the explicitness of it, very much just the way it's structured, the content it covers. It's much more mature
Yeah.
subject matter than what Lord of the Rings is doing with Rings of Power.
Which is a
The
bummer
best thing
because
about
I
Rings
feel
of
like
Power is they're just covering so much. It's kind of like Star Wars, where it's like you just get to see more of the world, which is fantastic. But
Yeah,
like content wise, in terms of like the acting, the dialogue, what's contextually happening in the story is much weaker than what House of the Dragon is
I
doing.
I highly agree with that. Yeah, I had read that, not to get on a, because this is in the Lord of Rings companion series or whatever that show is called, Rings of Power. I had heard that like it's not even tied to the original trilogy. Like it's like taking place in its own timeline. I don't know if that's true or not.
Ooh, that's
Seems like a
foul.
freaking odd choice.
Yeah.
The buddy that explained it to me, it was like playing Marvel Spider-Man on the PS4 versus watching Disney's Marvel
Hmm.
Spider-Man, how they're the
Interesting.
same kind of thing going on, same story,
That
same characters, but two totally different timelines.
that could be somewhat embedded in truth, but also it could just be people detracting it from what they know and love later on.
Yeah,
Similar to what people do with like the new Star Wars trilogy. Similar
right,
thing.
right.
So we'll see as that one comes along, but they just have such a polished craft here with
Yeah,
Game of
I agree.
Thrones. It's just a
And
different
I
ballpark.
will say that in this episode, there was far less like eyesores for me in this episode as far as the 3D soundstage thing going on.
Oh
There was
yeah,
actually one that I thought was freaking beautiful in this episode, and I think it might have been like overlooking King's Landing again, but it just the way the colors were. I don't know. I have to try to go back and find it
I like to
because
think
I
the overshots of King's Landing like that aren't on the volume, but most of this episode is basically in settings where the volume is strongest.
yeah,
Close proximity, near sighted shots, things like that.
yeah, there was
They're
one
probably just
shot
they're
that I'm
probably just
pretty
getting
sure.
they're probably just getting better at doing. They're probably cleaning up those shots of like the big panning shots for sure.
And we said that they were going to start to figure that stuff. If not by the end of the season, by season 2, things are going to look a little bit better.
Yeah.
And it does give the show kind of a different look from Game of Thrones, which I think is a good thing, because
Yes.
we talked about like they could have easily came in here and tried to just copycat everything that Game of Thrones did with a new story, right? And they're not. I mean, this show looks radically different from Game of Thrones, and I'm really liking the vibe that it's got going on. Does it have ugly scenes here and there? Yes. Do some of the dragons move weird? Sure. But I think as a
It's
whole,
familiar yet
yeah,
different.
yeah, I agree 100%.
It definitely has its own aesthetic
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah, it does. But not like a original trilogy versus prequel trilogy vibe. You know what I mean?
Correct. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not that jarring, but it does have a different look to it. Now, granted, we're only seeing really one location so far, maybe two that we saw in the
Hmm.
original series. But I'll be curious to see how they continue shooting this show. If they're going to stick with the 3D soundstage, or if they're going to go back to the more, because we had talked about
They
like,
should they should spice it up. They should mix and match. I don't
I
think they
think they
should go
should.
all in on one or the other.
Yeah, I think they definitely should, because I mean, some of the Dragonstone shots in the original series are phenomenal.
Oh yeah,
Understand that, phenomenal compared to
because
what
they're
we have
at
here,
location too.
and they're at location, right? And I get that that's probably a more expensive, more difficult, more grueling to be out in some of these crappy locations, but I think the end product turns out a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, just practical sets, realistic. It's a big difference in the series.
Yeah,
We saw with Game of Thrones, but there's downsides to doing the long night on set, on scene, on
yeah,
location. Like they have to film at night, people get hurt. It's freezing, it's muddy, it's disgusting. It's probably literally like lawsuits waiting to happen.
dude,
Toss
I'll
in
tell
the
you.
volume stage where it's like dry, it's like temperature controlled.
Yeah,
It's a different thing.
different thing, and I do. I have to go back and look to when they announced this series versus when they announced Lord of the Rings. I would imagine there was some sort of a rush to try to get this thing out before Lord of the Rings came out. That would be
Yeah,
my guess. That would be my guess. And
I
it's
mean,
quicker to do it this way, right?
yeah, they're probably like, they have ideas of things, so they probably were like, it's no coincidence that these come out within weeks of each other, right?
Right.
So,
And I think that if you look at season 1 of Game of Thrones, even versus season 2 of Game of Thrones, it looks very, very different. So
yes,
I think that now that they see that the show definitely got its traction, I don't think anyone would deny that.
firmly. Yeah.
It's definitely going to bring in the money if they put it into season 2. So I think they're going to probably elevate at least the special effects stuff in season 2 and maybe use a little bit more practical. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is the new route HBO is going, and they're going to stick with the, sometimes odd looking shots of King's Landing.
No, I think they'll continue to pump money into the series, just like Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones successively got more expensive, more detailed, all of that. I would only expect the same from this series.
Dude, I tell you, I don't
I
know
mean,
if
there.
you watched it, but did you watch The Last Watch, the documentary about filming season 8 of Game of Thrones
I
on
think I saw that
HBO?
like also many years ago. I
Dude,
did not. I have not rewatched it.
you need to. It is absurd what went into filming
Yeah.
that 8th season of Game of Thrones, and it sucks that it got kind of squashed by the fan base because they put a hell of a lot of work into that. Like an absurd, like you don't realize how much work goes into these shows, from the
Yeah.
costumes to the
Yeah. They're
amount of
not. They're not
snow
cheap
that.
affairs as
Yeah,
much
they're
as people
not.
like to bitch.
Right,
You
right.
can't take away from the fact that there's a lot of work that goes into them, regardless.
Yeah. It's well worth it. Even if you're like a somewhat Game of Thrones fan, it's worth going to watch that documentary because it shows like the grueling shit these people went through to film this season 8 of Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and Matt Smith's performance in episode 3, the zero dialogue performance that he had, people were on Twitter were like, "This dude needs an Emmy," like
So
over here.
good, dude. Yeah. Yeah, and I
So,
agree.
so it's just different. Yeah, I mean, Rings of Power might get some Emmys and some awards just for the name on it. Whereas
I don't
Game of
think it's
Thrones,
going to, bro.
whereas Game
Unless
of
it really
Thrones,
steps up.
whereas Game of Thrones, like it earned every award that all those actors in that show got from like the dirt, like out of nothing. That
Yeah.
that became everything that it was. So
Right.
I imagine the same here, especially when no one really gave this much expectation because they're all like, it could probably flop, and it really could have.
Could
So
have. Yeah, absolutely. It could have.
it's having a
But I
very similar
think
experience to Game of Thrones season 1. Like it's breaking out on its own
it
lane.
is, and it's exciting. Again, I feel bad for like Millie Alcock or whatever her name is that plays Rhaenyra and Alicent because they are great, dude. They are so good, and I'm
Yeah,
bummed to know that once we get that time jump, we're probably never going to see them again. Maybe we'll get a flashback here and there in season 2, but it sucks. I mean,
yeah,
it sucks. I get that the decision was made, had to be made, but maybe they didn't even trust it because these are 2 young actresses. So maybe they didn't, maybe they were a little lenient on if they wanted to stick with them or not. And it sucks because even like Rhaenyra in this episode, there are some times where she looks nearly identical to Dany,
yep.
to young Dany in the earlier seasons. I mean, it's jarring at some
I also
points.
think they're doing a good job making everyone seem older. Matt Smith seems older.
Yeah.
Her like they maybe could have done it, maybe not. I don't know.
Like
We'll see
she's
what the payoff is, and having maybe they truly do jump like 30 years or something.
if that's
And
the jump, then okay. I'm fine. If that's the
yeah,
jump, then
if
okay.
it's 10 years, nah. I mean, these
Yeah,
actresses, they're like they're
easily.
in their 20s right
Yeah,
now.
she's Millie's 22 years old.
Yeah,
So she
if they can
started
play a
playing a
14-year-old, they
14.
can play a 30-year-old.
Exactly, bro. Exactly. Exactly. And I hate to keep bringing that up because I know we talk about it on this companion series a lot. I'm just the more and more I get of these characters, the more I'm bummed that it's coming to an end here soon,
Yeah, and when you have 2 actresses stick it like they're sticking it, it just makes me worry that if the next 2 don't, like, it's gonna hurt the
It's
series
going to,
overall.
yeah. Now, granted,
So,
I think that at least from the trailers, I think that Alicent might be a step up, possibly in her change.
yeah,
I've
I
seen
think it's
less of Rhaenyra. I've seen less of Rhaenyra, so I don't really have a judgment on her character change or her actress change. yet.
I'm most worried about Allison's actors change.
Are
Just
you? Yeah.
I'm pretty confident in Rhaenyra's older actress, like playing it correctly and just like the younger actress did. It's just I'm worried about Allison's character becoming not the Allison we know, and just like the
Right.
change in attitude, temperament, and the character overall
Yeah,
is
but
what's going to worry me.
yeah,
If it
but that like lines up with the age jump, right?
Sure,
Like I'm
but you
totally
still
different
want to
than I
be
was
too
10 years
jarring.
ago. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
You want it to be believable that this is the same person, right? I
Right.
just don't want it to be like poof, Cersei alpha or alpha version of Cersei. Or
Yeah.
I don't want to say 2.0, but because she came before. But
Well, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see because I mean there are things they can do with her character to propel her into Cersei land,
oh yeah, for sure.
like murdering Otto. If Damon like murders
Oh
Otto, like
yes,
that would be the tipping point for a character to transform into a
I think
Cersei like
Allison
character.
should murder Otto.
Really? Well,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't think that will ever happen. Maybe
I think she needs to kill her dad.
just do it.
I
He's
think she
gone
might.
now. Like he's
Yeah, but
dead. Do you agree with me? Like
Otto,
he's got a short fuse here.
that dude, he's not a fighter. He's gonna die. Like
Yeah.
he just doesn't fight for what he's doing. Like he just kind of takes it, and makes his move. So he's gonna die, and Allison's probably gonna kill the king. Something weird like that's gonna
Really?
happen.
We'll
I
see.
mean,
I take
something's got
that
to change the king's mind, right? Or something
yeah.
has to shift where the king's doubled down on like you're the one, Rhaenyra. Like something's got to shift it here to where it's a problem,
Yeah.
and that's not clear.
Yeah, I think that yeah, I think the king's certainly just going to die naturally. I don't think he's going to be murdered in
Right.
any capacity. That's just my guess so far. I don't think Otto makes it out of the capital. Could be wrong. We'll see. I don't think like he's no longer the hand at the end of this episode, right? So,
Yep.
no, dude, not making it out. No way.
Not making it out. Yeah.
Damon is
No. I
hot on
mean.
his trail.
Yeah.
Why not? There's nothing I mean, you have to imagine that if Damon is looking at Otto without that thing on his chest, the little pin,
Yeah.
like he's got to know that obviously the king's pissed off at him or this wouldn't have happened. So is he
Hmm.
really going to be that mad at me if I just go murder him? Because we've been bickering since the beginning of the show and I'm kind of sick of his shit. So let's
Yep.
just cut it out. But part of me
I
is
think
hopeful that he makes it to the time jump because I really like him, you know? But I
true.
don't think he's going to.
Yeah, he's already looking really old too.
Yeah, he
Um,
is. Yeah.
but I mean, the king's probably gonna die of a burst belly, really, from Allison poisoning him.
You
That's what's
think?
gonna happen. Yeah,
We'll
they
see.
allude to it. They allude to
Do
it in the
they?
last scene. Yeah, because that's how Otto killed Viserys' dad.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, he said 5 days, right?
Yeah, he's like 5 days. He basically told him, like, basically he called him out. That's why I'm proud of Viserys right there. It's like he was like, bro, you basically killed my dad. If you did not do it directly, like you had something to do with it because
Well, it wasn't him, was it? It wasn't somebody else he was talking about? I don't think it was Otto.
nah, he was suggesting Otto had a part in that.
Oh,
He like pretty
interesting.
strongly called that out. Is like, I wonder what part you like had to play in my dad's
Huh.
death. 5 days, able warrior, dragon rider, just like everything under the sun, healthy, and he has a burst like gut, and he dies.
Yeah,
He's like
interesting.
tournaments last longer than like he
Yeah,
does as
yeah, I
Hand of the
remember yeah.
King.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know. I think there's something nefarious in Alicent that will come out against her
I
good
don't know.
nature. Otherwise,
I yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Her character currently, that would be like a total 180 for me if
oh
she
yeah,
turned around and killed the king.
I'm
But
not sure how
maybe
she's gonna get there.
after the time jump, maybe? I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
if the
after
king's gonna
after
make
the
it.
time jump. You
I
don't
don't
know
know
if
if the king's
yeah.
gonna make it.
He would make a very good decrepit 10 years later
Yeah,
king.
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I don't know where we're going because we have not seen, not that they would show it, but we haven't seen any scenes of him like really old or anything. So I don't think he's making it to the time jump. And it wouldn't really make Or would it? It actually would make more sense for him to make it to the time jump because it's not going to be 10 years before someone succeeds to the throne, right?
Correct.
So he
Correct.
almost certainly has to
Yeah.
make it at least
Right.
partially
He's not
into
going to
the time
die.
jump.
Then 10 years later, we've been
There's a
fighting
war.
for,
Yeah,
yeah.
no way. Okay. Good point.
Yeah. So we'll get there. Um, so basically, just as like a quick scene recap too, they're like kind of partying for like Damon's return, I guess. Like they're just kind of having a lunch or brunch out in the courtyard, and this is basically where the king is like snubbing Rhaenyra
Yeah,
because
he's super pissy about it.
yeah, he's really
Everything that
pissed.
she says, he gives her like a look.
He's like, well, then go look at the damn tapestry if you,
Yeah.
you want to.
Yeah.
I was like, dang, sassy. All of a sudden, he's like best buds with Damon, telling
Yeah.
stories, and she's just on his
Yeah,
shit
like
list.
childhood memory stories about their parents and stuff. But I
Yeah,
do really like the tapestry thing because is it Otto that suggests they showed Damon the
Allison.
tapestry? Oh,
Allison's
is it
saying there,
Allison? Okay.
and
Yeah,
I
it's
like
like
this because Allison is like she's playing this part of like the queen, right? What does the queen say to entertain the guests? Like, oh, you should go look at the latest tapestry in the hall.
yeah. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
Viserys is like laughing, like, yeah,
Right.
Damon wants to go look at a
Right.
painting.
Yeah, like have you been paying attention to your life, Allison? Like obviously Damon does not want to go look at that shit. You know what I mean?
He's trying to get butt face wasted right
But
now.
yeah, but I just super enjoyed every time Rhaenyra talked in the scene. The
Mm.
king's face afterwards is just like super pissy about everything that was coming out of her mouth, even though the stuff that she was saying was really not pissy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he was just supremely annoyed that she was back with no husband
Right.
picked.
Yeah.
Um, and this is where Allison, is we see her doing this throughout the episode, and she's just playing her part, but like she's also kind of tries to coach Rhaenyra on like, you complain about your lot in life, it's not so bad. Like every lord in the kingdom wants to be your husband, blah blah blah. And they kind of go back and forth in this scene, and it's good because they kind of rekindle their friendship. At least they kind of come to terms like, yeah, we kind of both agree that our lives suck in different ways, and not everything's all grand. So I like how that scene ended ultimately, and like I like how they brought that there.
Yeah.
But also Allison's kind of trying to be the queen that she's supposed to be, but at the same time, like this is like the first sign, like you said, compared to like previous episodes where she's just kind of like, ugh, like this isn't like as great as you think it is. Everyone
Right.
just looks at me as they just think of me as the queen. That's it. It's like only that layer deep. No one is like a friend to me like you were ever a friend to me, kind of thing.
Yeah. Speaking of the queen, did you watch the Ascension stuff following the real queen's death?
No.
Okay, it's
No. Oh yeah. Oh, like you're
jarringly,
talking real life. You're talking
yeah,
real
real
life.
life. It's jarringly close to the first scene where I think it was the end of the first episode where they're all pledging their loyalty to Rhaenyra.
Mm.
That's what they were doing, dude. They were all
Whoa.
pledging their loyalty to the new king, like one after, like lined up, coming up, saying the exact same lines. And dude, it was eerie. Like so weird that they have a monarch, isn't it? Isn't it
That
so
does
odd?
nothing really. Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's just
get that.
tradition thing.
I get that, but it's just so weird that it's still a thing over there. I don't know. Like I
Yeah.
get that they have no power, but
It's all for
there's
I mean,
money. There's money and power.
if
So
if you
and they
if you
obviously have money.
I need to finish The Crown, but I've seen the first 3 seasons of The Crown. It goes into how that all works, and
Yeah.
it's just wacky. Like how there's Parliament that's actually like the government, and then there's all these formalities with the Crown.
Right.
They just
It's
kind of
just
handle these two different aspects of like the state.
yeah. I mean, I have not paid attention to any of that stuff since like Princess Diana's death because I just don't really care. I think they're all snobby
Sure.
idiots. But it was cool to watch that, because now that I've watched Game of Thrones and seeing how similar the actual thing happening there was to Rhaenyra's pledge thing. So yeah, it was really eerie. And even
Pageantry.
like, yeah, even like God protect the king at the end, they all chant and stuff. It's like, really, it's like, what? So odd that we're still doing it. Like, why are we still doing this?
Dude, I mean, they're going to reprint all the money to have his face on it over the next few years. And they have to change it all from, God Save the Queen to God Save the King.
Right.
It's going to cost billions of dollars to
Yeah, so why are we doing it? Is, I guess, the question.
It's not us.
I know,
the
but
United
why are
Kingdom.
they doing it? Why? Like, if they have if he has no
Tradition.
power, okay, whatever.
They literally shut everything down for 9 days, I think.
I know.
Nobody works, no one does anything. Like, everything stops.
I know that you're saying that, like, they don't have any power, but the money behind them obviously shows that they have some sort of power. Maybe they're saying they don't.
Fun fact, there is a clause about not, like, devaluing the wealth of the crown, right? Like, over time. So they are exempt from a 40% tax on inheritance wealth. So he just gets all of it. So everyone else gets taxed 40% for inheriting money,
right?
Not the crown, because that would hit a clause that dilutes the wealth of their position.
Exactly. Yeah.
So many.
There's more to
things.
There's more to that freaking story. Like, maybe they're plastering. Yeah, he's got no power, but come on, dude. You look at the money there. Like, there's obviously something behind the scenes going on. Anyway, sorry, didn't want to derail the episode. I just wanted to bring that up because I thought it was so awkward.
Hey, it's relevant.
It's cool to watch.
That's a good cross reference there to what's really happening right now. We have a succession.
Yeah, we do.
The Crown. Good show. We get a little bit of.
Is it a good show?
Yeah. The first couple seasons is good. I mean, Matt Smith's in it.
Oh, is
being
he?
a prince.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's the prince.
Yeah,
he's he plays the person who just became king.
Is
in
it
real life today?
Based? Oh, okay. So it's based off of them.
It's their life verbatim.
Oh wow. Okay, cool. I'm in.
Of the queen that just died and him.
Oh, cool. Yeah, sign me up.
You should watch it. I need to finish. I hear it changes because they change actresses because they get older. Time jump.
Right. Yeah, we've seen them run into that problem a lot here lately, huh?
Yep. So yeah, huge parallels here between House of the Dragon
really
and the Queen of England.
Yeah.
And all that jazz. So we get Rhaenyra and Daemon catching up in the Godswood. I love all the Godswood scenes.
Me too, man.
We get 2 of these this episode. We get Daemon and Rhaenyra, and we also get Alicent and Rhaenyra. And this one is where Rhaenyra is kind of pushing him, like, why are you really backing in really Peggy as someone who like just wants to come home?
Yeah.
And this is where they have a lot of dialogue in High Valyrian, and he's kind of planting these seeds of like, oh, this is how I kind of go about like marriage and duty and all this stuff. And the scene before too, when she walks away after her dad like tells her to fuck off, like he's watching her very tightly. And they just always have that kind of connection, but this connection slowly just like hitting a little harder throughout this episode.
For sure. It's one way to describe it.
Yep. So lots of High Valyrian dialogue, which is always fun. I just like how these two have these. I just like how Targaryens and the Dragon Keepers have these side conversations in High Valyrian that no one else is privy to.
Yeah.
It's a fun.
I've always wanted to do that, like learn a different language of somebody else, so we could just talk shit in front of people and not have them worry about what we're saying.
Yeah,
but
just learn High Valyrian.
I did watch an interview with her actress, Rhaenyra's actress, talking about learning High Valyrian, and she described it as like learning like lyrics in a different language or something like that. Like that's the vibe. Like obviously she didn't learn the whole language, she was just learning her lines.
Yeah.
So I just like the High Valyrian stuff. I think it's super cool that it's like made up and these people are legit speaking a totally made up language. Like it's just really cool for a show like this.
Yeah, it's just a fun
And we're
detail,
getting a
and it
lot of it in here too. Like,
yeah, and it just highlights like a different connection that the Tigerians have over everyone else, and it really
yeah,
kind of highlights it's like them, and then there's everybody else, which I just think is a key detail.
yeah,
The next scene, we get the small council discussing how basically they traded like the crab feeder for the sea snake in terms of like the sea snake, which is Corliss. He is just
yeah.
MIA, right? He hasn't come back to the capital.
Still
He's
pissed.
out. He's out there making deals, marrying off his daughter to potentially like some big dude in Bravos.
Yeah, it's the
Um,
Sea. What they said it in Game of Thrones. The Sea Lord of Bravos, I think, is the name.
yeah,
Because, and I can't remember his name, but the one that trains Arya said that he was one of the swords of the Sea Lord of Bravos.
hmm
So, yeah, that little situation there is very freaking problematic for the crown because
yeah,
if you have the second biggest house in the Valerians going and partnering with the free cities in some capacity, that's a problem, a big problem, really.
yeah, and it's really kind of like the narrow sea here. Maybe this is like the second nod to like the king of the narrow sea. So first it was like
Yeah,
Damon formally, but really there's the sea snake out there, making his moves, right?
yeah,
Marriages, working with the free cities. So we don't get much more on this in the episode, but this is the small council meeting discussing the wider worldly affairs. But I believe Otto even kind of like pivots away from this. What does he mention that's like more important? But maybe it is the marriage. Oh, it is the
yeah,
marriage. So
yeah,
yeah. And
yeah.
he's
Because he says if they do this marriage, then we're gonna have to seek our own marriage
yep. And
because it is
obviously,
very problematic. I mean,
yeah. And at least Rhaenyra is in the council meeting, sitting at the table. So that's nice to see.
yeah,
Um, so that that's kind of like prefacing the state of the story up until the big point of this episode. So we kind of have firmly everything that's been going on story so far done. We kind of have a check on where everybody's at, what we're
yeah,
planning, who's doing what, and this is where we kind of sprawl into a huge sequence of many scenes, but all strung together. And it all starts with Alicent here, just kind of doing some evening duties as queen, as mother, of children in the evening. As
yeah,
Rhaenyra, free of all these worries, just kind of goes to her chamber. He's like, "Good night, handsome hunk Christian Cole. I'm gonna go to bed." And he's like, "Have a good night. I'm gonna stand here
yeah.
all freaking night and
Right.
guard the door." Someone must take his day shift, or he just doesn't sleep because he intends to stand there all night. Maybe till just like a certain hour, but I don't know. I don't
No,
believe that
you
either.
gotta think that he's there all night. There's probably shifts. Like he's there till like 3 a.m. and then a new dude rolls in and takes his
Right?
place so he can go get some sleep because he's got day duties as well. I
Yeah.
really, really like again the comparison between Alicent and Rhaenyra in this scene. You can tell Alicent is just not vibing with
She's
the
not
crying
digging it.
baby stuff. She's not digging it at all. And I really like Rhaenyra's scene in her bedchambers because it's just I don't know, it had like a Indiana Jones
This is a
Uncharted
very
vibe going on.
yes, very fun, very kind of different element than we're used to seeing in Thrones, but it's just a fun sidebar, much like the whole bit with like the plays that we get in Game of Thrones that we see in this episode. But you get
Yes.
the meta commentary on like the story from the common folk putting on
Yeah.
plays. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is fun. Just like you don't know what's going on, and once again, like you said, like either Uncharted or like even Harry Potter, like the
Yeah.
secret passageway, and like you're dressing up in disguise and you're sneaking out. And there's also a really good score in this when she is walking through like these back corridors that kind of goes throughout the whole mid part of this episode. Just a really good music tone in the background.
Yeah.
As it's kind of like this upbeat mischief, kind of like peppy through the night kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
And
I really dug that whole scene, primarily because of, she finds the bag in her bed
yep,
chambers, doesn't know where it came from, empties it out. It's got like some clothes in it, and then it's got a scroll in there as well. And she opens up the scroll, and it's got like a map pointing to her bed, and then with an X on a portion. And I think that it might have been in the post episode commentary where they said that Magor the Cruel built these escapes through the castle and then killed everybody that built those so that he was the only one that knew where they were at. So I thought it was really cool that Damon knows where these are because he grew up here. Like,
yeah,
any kid is probably going to find that if they're growing up in that castle, they're going to find those, especially in times like this where there's not much in the way of entertainment for children. So I don't know. It had a cool vibe to it that she's like sneaking away. She puts on the clothes. That's what they were for. They were changed for her, covers her head so nobody can identify her, and then kind of follows the trail out to meet Damon.
yeah, and just yeah, this whole sequence is just this is one of those moments where it sets itself apart from Game of Thrones because like this isn't something you get in Game of Thrones. This is where it
Right.
has its own type of vibe going on here and just really steps into its own as a show.
Yeah.
Really, really like this.
Yeah.
But also, I think Queen Cersei um, had made mention, or even Jamie had made mention Game of Thrones about like different secret passages through the castle. That's how they did their deeds.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's cool to see it in this kind of secret. And you explain it, Harry Potter. I've never seen Harry Potter. I know. I need to watch them.
Dang.
And if you're describing them like this, I definitely need to watch them because I know I would love those movies. I just haven't gotten around to them.
Yeah, they're
And
just good. They extract that like good fun vibe feeling that this scene kind of gave off, just like a
yeah,
sense of adventure,
right,
really.
yeah. And
So
the game got delayed, so it really threw a wrench in my Christmas time because I
sure.
was really planning on being waist deep in Harry Potter at Christmas time. But yeah, I just I hope we get more of these scenes, and I think we might with her sneaking away and doing stuff she's not supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Um and it's so well acted the way she just presents herself throughout
Yeah,
this sequence. She's like having fun, she's excited, she's also like very interested in this like different life,
yeah. She's
and
with the cool uncle, which is
she's
also
with
really cool too.
she's with
you
her
know,
cool uncle, like doing just like things that her dad would not let her do.
exactly. Yep.
But she portrays this weird like she's both innocent and naive, but she isn't. Like she like knows this is like in her in terms of like behavior wise. And the king says it later, like they have the like dragon in them. They are restless, these
Yeah.
two.
Yes. Yep.
And she fully steps into that and she has no reservations about any of it.
No, and I think it's really cool that this comes right off of the back of the Allison rocking the baby thing. We're seeing how miserable Allison is. Meanwhile, Rhaenyra is down on the town, having the time of her life with her cool uncle, seeing all the crazy stuff going on. First off, wild shit going on in this city. There's like a dude on a high, like a what do they call it?
It's on
Tightrope, walking a
Yeah.
tightrope up across dragon spitting fire.
It's almost like a different show started for a little bit here because when
Yeah.
they just start with that overpan of the city, like it is just bumping and like the immersion was just there. It
Yes.
felt there's lots of things going on there, but they did a good job of capturing like this medieval city just at night.
Yeah.
Can't explain it. It was just good. Like they really
I
pulled
agree.
you into whatever was hopping down on the streets, and you could see the streets like teeming with this energy. And then the next sequence is you are down in these streets, and there's like metal dragon heads like shooting fireplaces. Like you
Yeah.
said, there's tightrope. There's people like having sex off in the side uh, alleyway
Yeah.
nonstop.
There's
There's
like the
vendors
creepy,
selling like
like,
food.
yeah, the food vendors. And then there's like I don't know if she's like a fortune teller or whatever, the creepy looking thing with no eyes. I don't know if that was like a,
She asked if she wanted to see her death or something.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, so like a palm reader or some shit. I thought it was super cool to see. And it really got me excited because I believe that there is a Flea Bottom spinoff in,
Ooh.
early development. And that honestly, out of all the ones that they announced, sounded the lamest to me until I watched this episode. I was like, yeah, give me some more down in here. This is totally different from Game of Thrones, totally different from anything we've seen in this world so far. And I could definitely see them telling some really cool stories just in Flea Bottom with the lowborn in the red light district, if you will, you
Yeah.
know?
And just like the passageways, they mentioned that element in Game of Thrones. We got to see it in this, right? So I really feel like we're seeing things we damn well knew about, but we're
Yeah.
never shown it in Game of Thrones.
Right. Yeah.
And they just dive face first into it, and they're like, "Here it is."
Yeah. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and her same kind of like demeanor that she's portraying here. Damon also has his own demeanor of like he's in his element. Like he's kind of
Yes.
like, welcome to the other
My
side
world.
of my
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Um, he's basically king of this sea of
Right.
debauchery.
Yeah. And I think that is like one of his nicknames too, the Prince of Flea Bottom or the King of Flea Bottom or something like that. So yeah, it was cool to
He's
see
like the
that.
prince of like Silk Alley or something.
Yeah, yeah, maybe it's something like that. But yeah, it was definitely cool. Once we get to a little further into it in the brothel specifically, it was a little bit like, okay, it's just a brothel, like we get it. And it's funny because at the end during the commentary, a woman actually filmed that scene and she talks about
Yes.
how she tried to give a woman's touch to a sex scene. You know what I mean? Like, how would a woman feel during all of this? And I think they did
Yeah.
accomplish that somewhat. There's not okay, there's a lot of nudity in the brothel, but later after the brothel, I think that might be the scene that she's talking about that she was filming where there is really no nudity at all. So, and we talked about in the original series, like those are the more powerful sex scenes, right?
Yeah.
Danny and John. That's much more powerful than anything we got in the first couple seasons of Game of Thrones, where it was just like over the top, like, Littlefinger speech that he's giving with the two girls on the couch. It's just like, come on, like
That's
enough
just
is
HBO
enough.
dramatic effect.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I did get like the brothel scene for me. I typically don't care about nudity or sex scenes. I think that's like a maturity thing. Honestly, like if that sticks out to you, it's like, okay, like grow up. You know what I mean? But this brothel scene, I will say, was like just a hair too long for me. Where it's like, okay, like we
Well,
get it.
yay and nay. So I think there was an element to it where we were in like a tavern that was like the upstairs of the brothel. Then there was this element of like, let's go deeper, right, into the night,
Yeah.
deeper into Damon's world, right, where you kind of go after 2 a.m.
Right. Yeah.
So I think they were going at some length to like kind of show that. And I thought it was fairly appropriately timed out in terms of even she was still had this look of like, this shit's crazy, but like I'm very, very intrigued by like
Right.
what is happening here because it was
Yeah.
obviously tapping into a whole different side of her that like Damon has clearly expressed his whole life. One, because he's a guy, as him
Yeah.
and Viserys talk about later in terms of
Yes.
he was like, when we were her age, like we banged half of the city, and he's like, well, yeah, but like we were young men. Like
Yeah.
it's completely different for women, and that's very well shown in this episode.
Yeah.
But also that director, she was saying how, doing she did the brothel scene too, but like just showing a place where both sexes are going for the same pleasure expression, right? It's not
Right.
just a whorehouse; it's more of an orgy pleasure
Yeah.
zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like the lengths they were going to show. And also, it was very interesting how he took off her hat, fully let her hair out, and like everyone was recognizing them as they were
Mhm.
walking through. And like this was kind of like once again his people from like episode 1, where like he had
Yeah.
a little brothel party and everyone was like, yeah, Prince Damon, heir
Right.
to the throne.
Yeah.
So like this is somewhat like a safe zone for him in terms of like where he's completely in his element and like he's a regular in this
Yeah.
area and like all the girls just want to see the dragon bang and like
Right.
that's
Yeah.
like he's kind of like an act around here. But
Absolutely.
the latest thing that he was putting on as a show was that he had brought his niece here, and they began to engage in some sexual activity, which
Coupling. Get
coupling,
it
that was
right,
the word,
as Otto
coupling,
as Otto tells.
and an entanglement,
Yeah.
as Will Smith might put it.
Yeah.
So, or his wife would put it.
His wife would
Um,
put it, yeah.
yeah. So this whole bit is interesting as the way this plays out forward. I love how this, what was once a scene where he was just taking advantage of her, she steps into it a little stronger than he thought she would. He no longer has control of the situation because she likes it just as much as he does. That somehow intimidates him and he like backs off, realizes like what he's doing, it's not like something he wants to do. That's the weird thing. Like we got different things from the showrunners. There's the way it's kind of shown on screen. So there's a lot of layers here to like exactly what he's thinking, and that's even more convoluted once we get to the he said she said later in the
Yes.
episode.
Yeah.
So, but in this scene, they really do just couple. She's like de-pantsed and a little undressed. He kind of sulks off into the night.
Yeah, that scene was confusing to me because,
Yeah.
I thought somebody hit him and
Now I
then,
think he
like,
slapped the
drug him
wall.
away, and I think that is what it is, that he but even later in the episode where we see where he's at after that night, he's with the I can't remember her name, but
The White
his
Worm, as she's named in this
yeah,
episode.
and so I was like, "Did she go in there, hit him, and drag him out of that?" But I think he did just hit the wall and
He
dip,
slapped the
which
wall
is
in
like
frustration.
I get that, but, like, no concern for Rhaenyra he just dips
None.
out without her.
Just
Like,
dips
good
out.
luck, good luck. Like,
Yeah.
maybe, like, take her home at the very least.
Yeah, and she even had a good, like, confused, like, Damon, like, "You're just gonna leave me?"
Yeah, like and I feel like that I don't know, maybe as a father, I'd be pissed at both of even him taking her there in the first place,
Sure.
but primarily him leaving her there by herself, the
Yeah.
princess in the scummiest portion of the city, in probably the scummiest building of the scummiest section of the city. You know what I mean?
I would
And he
like to
just
think
dips.
Damon went to the upper class scummy
Yeah,
establishments, like, there are worse.
yeah, that's probably
Always
true.
imagine there's a worse one.
Yeah. But I do really like her leaving, and I like the little kid. I really like the little kid seeing her and then kind of scurrying away because that's a big drawback to Varys and his little birds.
Yep.
The kind of children of Flea Bottom scurrying around the shadows. I really, really liked that they used that like a kid to kind of get this ball rolling in the Red Keep later on. And even though I said at the time I felt like the brothel scene was a little too long, by the end of the episode, I was like, yeah, dude,
Right.
needed it, had to be there. I think everything pulled together at the end of the episode for me, for sure.
Yeah, and especially the fact that, like, now if they were to have had a sex scene, those 2, then it would have been a very long brothel plus sex scene.
Yeah,
Then
yeah,
it would
I
have been too
agree.
long. But the fact
Yeah,
that they don't fully commit to that scene and it just kind of abruptly ends, that's where it's just like, okay, that was the right amount of time. Whereas
yeah,
like while you're watching that, you're like, I know where this is going, and this is going to be a very long sequence
yeah,
here.
yeah.
But
And I like that. I like the kind of subverting your expectation there. That's the right
yeah,
way to do it, Ryan Johnson. You take something like incest that we've seen so much in Game of Thrones
and we
and
expect,
almost give it to us and then rip it away.
yep.
So yeah, I enjoyed the way that scene ended, to be honest with you. And I
And
also
this
like
makes sense.
Rhaenyra showing back up to, you know,
Just front gates, just like
yeah,
didn't
just
even go in
rolls
the
up,
back way.
goes right by Cole, and he's like, "What? Wait."
I'm confused.
Yeah, super confused.
Um, but what I yeah, she rolls out of there. No, I lost it anyways. Oh, during all this though, we're getting the bounce back to Allison. So and the king. So Allison gets
Yes.
the kids to bed, and this is all interwoven through this as a great just like touch point between once again Allison and Rhaenyra,
Yeah.
and where they're at in their lots in life. And once again, oh, it must be so hard to be Rhaenyra, where every lord in the kingdom wants to marry you, and you get to go out and party all night with your uncle, who's like the coolest guy alive.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I have to put a kid to bed. I have to bathe my like helpless king in his fleshy wounds.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go to bed finally after all that effort and be like, I'm going to go to sleep, only to get paged by the king to come to his bedchamber at a late hour for
Right.
him to just like bone me down because he's a little horny at night.
Yeah.
And I just really want to go to sleep
Yeah.
after dealing with the
And she
children.
even tries to get out of it too. She's like,
Yeah.
the hour's very late. And she's like,
She's
yeah,
like, yeah,
sorry.
my bad. Like, you got to
Yeah.
go, the king.
Right.
And this is the scene that you're describing too, where like she's just like not into it. And then like
Not.
even afterwards, like he's passed out, she's just laying there like, oh my God,
Yeah.
like
Not
this
vibing.
sucks.
Yeah. Not vibing with it.
And all of that in contrast to Rhaenyra's activities here down in down the slums and the streets. And then, like you said, she just kind of rolls past Cole and pass through the front gates because other people are now able to corroborate that she was
Right.
out and about late at night. And Cole's just like, what? And like, I'll go tell, the Lord Commander or whatever, Captain of Kingsguard. And this is where she obviously not satisfied with where her night ended from based on where it was going.
She's still a little hot and bothered. Yeah.
The dragon is still like her dragon blood is still boiling.
Right.
And I'll give it to him. He said no.
He did.
But it wasn't very convincing to anyone.
No.
It was kind of like a stop.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of.
It was a very soft stop. It was like,
it's a very soft stop. Yeah, he's totally into her. Like we saw that coming. I think we even talked about it. Even their first interaction.
Yeah,
they were vibing with each other, and then the campfire scene.
He's the
hot king.
Like,
Kingsguard.
He's like the jock. Yeah. He like
the knight in shining armor.
Yeah, and also he's like the one dude that's like not into her because she's like the princess and
right,
a way to gain stature, even though it would be a very like smart thing for him to be like, hey, I know how I can like rank up my house, get with the princess. Like he's just happy that he's like not a peasant boy and he's like a Kingsguard, which is the greatest honor his whole house has even had.
Yeah, well, and I think that's why. I mean, he has to know that would never go over well if he tried to get with Rhaenyra, like try to marry Rhaenyra, right? That's never going to happen. Like the king's not going to allow that to happen because he even says in this episode, like, or maybe she says, like, you're just marrying me off to solve your political headaches.
Yep.
And
you are my political
are my political headache. So yeah, it's never going to jive. But I really enjoyed this scene. Like, man, has it got to be awful to try and get that armor off in the heat of the moment? You know what I mean?
I do like how much time they spent there. Like, I'm like, he has so many layers on him. This isn't just gonna fall off. And they took the time to be like, nah, like she has to like take off many parts of this armor.
Right.
Then finally
we're like 30 minutes in, and we're getting undressed finally.
Well, I'm thinking, like the whole trope in modern society, like, oh, you got to hurry, put on your pants and jump out the window when you get caught. Sleeping with someone. In this situation, like, what's he gonna do? Like, throw on like the pile of armor that's just in her room when someone walks in? Like, busted.
So do they put that stuff on themselves?
I think, like Brienne explained to Podrick, they're fully capable. But it's super helpful if someone is there to help you.
Yeah, because it looks very freaking complicated, bro. Like she pulls off like 7 things before.
There's strings.
Yeah,
He has
yeah.
like the
The
guard
cape.
around the back neck, the
Yeah,
cape.
that.
He's got the the wrist guards, the
Right. Yeah.
forearm guards.
Yep.
It's a lot of
Yeah.
armor.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
finally get him
And
down
it's
into his
funny.
long johns, and then
Right.
these kind of everything falls off.
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed this scene. Like I said, I think we saw this coming at some point, that they were going to hook up at some point. And I'm very curious to how this is going to play in later episodes, because you have to assume that at some point Rhaenyra is not going to be in the capital anymore, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's going to be some point where she's going to be either exiled or leaves on purpose or something along those lines. And Cole would seemingly not leave with her. He would stay with the King's Guard.
Depends on how onto them anyone would be, because they're,
Yeah.
as a King's Guard, he kind of stays there. But two things. One, this is very in line with one, Targaryens, two, royalty. Like Cersei, she just had her toys that were laying about the castle, and she did whatever she wanted in this
Right.
avenue. So this is completely normal behavior, right? For her to secretly just sleep with whoever she wants, kind of as Damon suggested, because that's what we see out of other people like
Yeah.
Cersei and Jaime later on. So the fact that it's not a relative is actually a step up here. And we were subverted that, it's not her uncle we get this scene with. It's actually someone that kind of makes sense completely.
Yeah.
And everyone's down with seeing that because it makes sense narratively. Whereas
Right.
the Damon thing would be forced just for the sake of Targaryen
Yeah. I mean,
stuff.
I hate to throw a wrench in it, but I think that we're going to see a lot more of Daemon
Oh
and
yeah,
Rhaenyra.
sure.
I think that's definitely where we're going to be heading. But it is nice to see that the whole episode is just her being like a teenager, dude, at the end of the day, right?
Yep.
So it's really cool to see all that stuff that happened. But what I really enjoyed was the kind of fallout from everything. You know what I mean?
Right.
And how
yeah.
one bad night on the town can really wreck a lot of the stuff going on for Rhaenyra.
Yeah. And just, potentially for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, overall, really, really good scene, and really kind of like cap off to the night, like you just said, like the night out.
Yeah.
But then this is where things kind of start kind of like falling apart and through. And we get like the real movers. And this is where it's like, okay, we didn't just go through all of that for nothing, right? So this is like, okay, what are we talking about this episode? And this last like third act of the episode is the meat and potatoes of
Yes.
what we just like saw and what it all meant. And it meant a lot of things, which is really cool about this show. So very early in the morning here, the Hand is summoned to the front gate, and he has a message from a messenger from the White Worm, which we then immediately see is Damon's whore. Don't know her name, but she's basically like a early version of Varys here at the capital. And we get the same little boy that saw Rhaenyra leave the brothel, told the Hand the news. The Hand seemingly knows that this information came from the White Worm, and then this boy gives the White Worm the money that he received from the Hand for payment for the information.
Yes.
This is where I think it's just lazy on Otto's part. Like, he's just taking this information verbatim, and to me, both the King, Rhaenyra, like everyone should call Otto out. Like, it's a serious allegation on otherwise unverified information that you just heard.
Right. But
sure,
I think that I don't think he thinks it through, because it's such a beautiful piece of information that just fell into his lap. You know what I mean?
It's like Friday morning, got like the best news ever. Like, this
best
weekend's
news
gonna
ever.
rock.
Yeah. So we know that he is obviously trying to get Aegon on the throne, which is Alicent's young son. And this is just too damn good to pass up. You know what I mean? This could really, really ruin her reputation if this turns out to be true, which does seem odd because the Targaryens do this a lot. You know what I mean? So it shouldn't be like, I don't know.
True.
I think that it's because they're trying to marry her off. That's the main reason. Like she needs to
Correct. She's
remain
now
innocent.
spoiled.
Right. Yeah.
Purely because she is, in contrast to Alicent, who is like the perfect atonement of like maiden behavior.
Right.
Right.
She's
To
like the little
Otto.
church girl. Yeah. She's like
Yeah.
the church girl. Yeah.
Who like perfect execution of like, I'm gonna marry my daughter off to the king and she's gonna become queen. Whereas like
Yep.
we're trying to do, like, the king's trying to do this and like everything is just hitting him in the face, like this is becoming very difficult. Like the last thing you need is be like, oh yeah, she's spoiled. She's already
Right.
had sex, so
Yeah.
there that goes.
Yep.
So yeah, you're right. It is a very perfect, just here's a very nice hand, Otto. How would you like to play? He's like, oh, I'm gonna play it. Like,
Yeah. Play it right immediately.
let's go. Like,
Yeah.
he's like the wasted guy at the, in the casino that's just like
Yeah.
getting
Just
all
won all the money.
he's on all the luck, all the
Yeah.
money. He's like, let's go, let's
Just
keep
put it
going.
all on black. Put it all on black.
Let's do it. So, and this is also where I kind of get thrown off by him. So like he has this like little scene where he's like contemplating like the severity of like what he's
Yeah.
about to tell the king.
Well, I think he's really not into being the one specifically to tell the king. You know what I mean? I think that's why
Yeah.
he
can't think of it. His problem is he can't think of a more clever way to deliver that information to the king. He's like, oh, my only option is just go tell him.
Yeah.
Like, whereas like Littlefinger would have been like, I'm gonna like get it to the king, but in like a curveball.
Yeah.
Where I have nothing to do with it.
Or maybe he's just like in his head, like, okay, coupling. Yeah, that's the right coupling. That's what I'll say. Coupling. Yeah. Yeah. There we go.
How would I describe this? They were coupling.
I love that. Coupling. That's such a great way to describe it.
Yeah. So he goes to confront the king and tell him this terrible news first thing in the morning. King's like, oh, the sea snake? Do we know something like good? He's like, oh no, it's just something more terrible and offsetting. The princess, she was spotted out with Daemon doing stuff. And the king's like, say it. Like, what are you saying to me? And I like the pressure he applies here to Otto. Like, this is where we get the king who is half of every episode shown as like a pushover. And then we get the little like dragon king that like pops out where he's
every
like,
now and then, yeah.
One MFer, say it. Like, whatever you're accusing my daughter of. Like any dad would to like another guy that just rolls up and is like, yo, your daughter is like, excuse me. I need you to say verbatim like what you're suggesting here.
Yeah, it's like early in the morning. He just woke up. He's grumpy, not into Otto's shit this early in the morning before he has his coffee.
Just banged
or whatever
your daughter. Now tell me what's going on.
Yeah. Just spit it out, Otto. Not vibing with this shit this early in the morning.
Yeah. And it's more bad news, right? King doesn't like bad news. And then he presses him like, dude, like the nerve you have to like come here with like unverified, won't tell me who said it. Like whoever said it should be like beheaded in the first place for even saying it.
Yeah, I think he even says like, I'll carve their eyes out. Like, damn, bro. That escalated quickly.
Yeah, he's pissed. And I mean, and this is kind of true because like Otto's like very lawyer, like I can't reveal my sources. And it's like, the king just asked you a question.
Yeah, I think you kind of need to, right?
Semi-important claim you're making here. So, like, this is where it's very much like an unverified gossip.
Yeah.
However true, however much supporting evidence, like, yes, she was seen coming in the wee hours of the morning. Daemon just sulked through the gates, wasted. Like, it's all kind of making sense, but at the same time, you can't just say these things because I think Alicent and Rhaenyra talk about later, like it's just treason to even suggest such a thing.
Right.
So I do like the king for pushing back very hard on this whole thing instead of just being like, oh, woe's me. I must deal with my daughter.
We don't get a lot
all
of
overheard
it,
by Alicent.
I do like the dragon king description that you gave him. Every now and then it comes out, and it's good every time that it comes out. It's just very few and far between that it actually does,
Yep. And Allison hears all this. I don't think her father really knows that, but she's standing there when um, the king turns around, and she goes to confront Rhaenyra about it in the Godswood. She basically summons her there to have this conversation at their favorite chat spot, and Alicent plays the role of the queen, accusatory, seeking the truth, weighing in on like the gravity of the situation, which
Yep.
Rhaenyra is still very much the innocent, like teenage girl that's just like, oh, it's just a night out in the town, like had a good time. What's the big deal? And
Right.
Allison's like, it's a big deal. Like there's things going on here that are not cool for
Right.
anyone. Um, and she pushes her and presses her for the truth. And this is the first this is technically the second rendition of the night that we get besides what we saw. We get what Otto is told and tells. Now we get Rhaenyra's take on it, telling Alicent, like sworn on her mother, she's telling the truth. And technically isn't lying, but she isn't giving the whole truth. So she's technically in the right in terms that nothing happened between her and Damon.
Right. I mean, the
Pinky
Otto
swear promise.
story, the Otto story is not true,
Wrong.
right?
Not
It's
true.
wrong.
It's wrong.
And I like the way she defends herself. I like how blunt Alicent is in the scene about everything and how upset she is about it. But yeah, it's cool to see that, like you said, Otto just overplayed his hand very quickly here. Didn't get the full story, even though I think he even says that like multiple people said it. But I think what multiple people said was that they saw her in a
Yes.
brothel with Damon, and he took that as, well, there's only one thing you're doing in a brothel with your
Yeah.
uncle because you're a
Yeah.
Targaryen, right?
Yep.
So
Too good to
yeah,
be true.
too good to be true. So he immediately goes to it, and it really backfires in the back half of this episode for him pretty drastically.
Yeah, and I'm really happy that Rhaenyra didn't like trick herself into like giving out Cole. I thought for
Right.
a second she was gonna
I
be
thought she
like,
was too.
uh, it was just Cole. I made it happen. And it's like, thank God she like zipped her lips and just let it play out.
Yeah, because
So
that's like the teenage girl thing to do. Like, no, I
right,
didn't have sex with him, but I did have sex with this sexy
my
Dornishman.
my uncle. What are you talking about? I had sex
Yeah.
with Christian Cole.
Right.
Oh, you didn't have to tell me all that. You could have just lied your way through this.
Yeah.
So
Do
yeah,
you think
so
that Christian Cole thing's gonna come up later down the road? Like, is
I
this
like
gonna
to
be an issue
think
for him?
I like to think it's not.
Okay.
I like to think he's just like the slick guy that like got away with it.
Yeah.
Um, but we'll see. I just don't see it as being like important anywhere. Like, what's the deal? Like, we're just gonna behead him and like ruin his character. Like, let's just let
I
him
think
sulk
it's
around.
Yeah, I think it's going I don't think that he's gonna get caught with what happened, but I do think this is going to be a major pivotal point on
Yes.
who he sides with maybe in the coming war for
Yeah.
sure, which will be very interesting because if he does side with Rhaenyra, he's going to be in King's Landing siding with the other side theoretically.
Yeah.
If I'm thinking of how this is going to pan out.
Yeah.
That's how I would imagine.
Right.
Because I do think that we have seen maybe scenes in the trailer of him and Alicent, like him guarding Alicent. So
Mm.
that could be very, very, very interesting way to play all of this in the
It shall
coming
be.
episodes.
It's a small castle at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I do like this too, where Alicent is gathering the evidence, the what does a cop do when they go get everyone's story? Like
Um,
everyone's what is it? Their alibi, right?
Alibi. There you go. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Allison's kind of like going out and doing her dad's job better. Like she's like, okay, dad really, really messed that up first thing in the morning. I was just up all night for a very variety of reasons I don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
Here's the morning. I have to go now do this other thing. So she's gathering this information to really defend Rhaenyra and like
Yeah.
pivot this conversation to be a little bit better. And she even like works with the king, and they discuss this more openly. She's like, this, okay, I'm not going to jump over this because this is important. Damon then sulks into the castle like blasted, like this dude can
Blasted, yeah.
barely walk.
I love this scene.
Instantly
All of him
grabbed,
here.
instantly grabbed by the king's guard, which he's just like, don't fucking touch me. And they
Yeah.
drag him all the way into the throne room, throw him in the throne room, and the king confronts him about this. This scene is super interesting because this is the third take alibi on what happened. The king is accusing Damon of the worst of it because the king probably believes Damon is doing the worst of it, because also the
Yeah.
king is realizing
How
that
could you not?
Damon is still Damon. Like, he comes
Right.
back, nothing's changed. Damon, you're still like after the throne, really.
Yeah.
And how could I easily be so fooled once again by you, my brother?
Yeah.
Damon doesn't at all defend himself or even replay any variety of what happened than what
No,
the
he
king
doesn't
is
even
saying.
deny it. Yeah, he doesn't even deny it.
Doesn't even deny it. So I don't know if he thinks it happened. That's what the white worm, told him happened. I don't know what is at play there, because she is very critical to how this information got out and who got told.
Well,
Meanwhile,
I
having Damon, who is like very critical to this lie, this story, in her chamber for the
yeah,
night.
I think that it's more, how do I want to say this? It's better for him for people to think. It's
Yes.
better for his goals for people to think that him and Rhaenyra hooked up that night, because
Oh,
he
for
wants
sure.
to marry Rhaenyra. He says there, "Marry me to Rhaenyra, and we will
He's very
bring it."
much
Go ahead.
he's very much kind of like, this is what he always does. Like, regardless of what happens, he doesn't really care what's true or what's real or not. He's like, I can use this.
Yeah, exactly, and that's yeah. I don't think it was a lie that was told to him by the girl. I think that it's just the goal that he is after is the throne, right? Rhaenyra is the heir to that throne. So he wants to marry Rhaenyra because it's a Targaryen thing. He says, like our ancestors did, and will
Yep.
bring the House of the Dragon back to its former glory. He very much wants to bring back the Aegon the Conqueror Targaryen
Yeah.
versus what's going on
You're
now,
not a
which is
conqueror.
right. So yeah, I think it's definitely advantageous for him, for the king, to think that they hooked up, because now she is, like you said, she's ruined. She can't be married off to anybody else, but she can be married off to Damon, which
Yep.
theoretically saying for him is like a freaking win-win, right? Because
Yep.
he's gonna marry the princess who's the heir to the throne. He's gonna get the throne that he's after, just in the scummiest way possible, you know?
Yeah. And the more interesting part of that is the king now has like three versions of the story here, or two versions really. There's the, either way, she was out of position and made herself vulnerable.
Yeah.
But whether or not what happened or not, he's kind of he's past that. Um, as we see as the episode winds down, um, but he, this is what him and Allison are talking about in their chambers. Is like, she's like, does Damon ever tell the truth straight up? So like, he's probably lying. Rhaenyra swore she isn't. Let's go with what Rhaenyra said. But at the same time, King's like, I'm not going to take any chances, right? Um, and he's still in like full dragon form. Like, he is owning this situation. And I think that's
Yeah.
very key to his character, and how that kind of plays through. And Allison's on her side. Damon's a liar on all fronts. Otto is also can't be trusted because it's very clear what his agenda is anymore. So the king is taking control of the narrative
Yeah.
properly. So, and the next scene, we get here second to last is him talking to Rhaenyra, and I like how he opened this conversation up with her with the dagger that has the whole
Yes,
Song
loved
of
it.
Ice and Fire,
Yeah.
and he basically is reiterating like, "Hey, lots of stuff going on. I get it. I'm pissed." But you need to remember, like, there's this thing that I told you that's gonna happen. That's
Yeah.
it's
It's
bigger than
very
like
important. Yeah.
your night out with
Yeah.
your uncle.
Yeah, I really, really, really like that. I love the use of the dagger,
Hmm.
especially with what we know from the original series and how important that dagger ends up being in the end. And it's cool to see that heating it up brings out the what you assume is High Valyrian writing
Yeah,
on the inside. So yeah, super cool. I'm loving that we're still vibing with the White Walkers, even though we're never going to see them in the show. We're still discussing them, which is really
yeah.
cool.
It's the meta, like what's important here, and
Yeah,
all the crap aside, he's like, listen, you're still heir. Like, I'm not going back on that because I am not going to be looking like a weak king on that front.
right.
You're still heir because I said so. You will marry Laenor Valerian, and we will make this all better. More dragons, strong family. Do as I say, no questions asked. Fantastic delivery from him.
Yeah,
Followed up by an even stronger proposition from her. It's like, that's fine by me, but you need to deal with, like, you need to do your duty as the king and deal with, like, dirtbag over here
yeah.
spreading foul rumors about me that are not true because I did not sleep with
Awesome.
my uncle.
Right. Awesome power move from her. Brilliant, brilliant power move from her, really, because she know. I mean, if she didn't know already, she knows now that he's out to get her, right?
Oh, yeah.
And she also knows that the king wants her to marry. The Valerians are a very, very good fit, so she can sneak in a deal of her own at this crucial moment. And he's going to take her up on it because she agreed to marry and to marry the Valerian.
Yeah.
So, yeah, great, great move, man. Absolutely loved this.
Yeah, and Otto, and more or less, Damon told her that in the streets after the play. He was like, Aegon is like, he's the one that they all want. Like, it's not
Yeah,
you. And obviously that's the hand who's pushing that agenda.
right.
So like,
Also,
she's not dumb.
we breezed over the play. Love these things, man. Every time we get these meta plays, they're so good. So this one was maybe not as good as the original, but it's up there. It's cool to see how
It's
the low born, if you will, sees all the stuff in the crown
the
going
play in
on.
Game of Thrones was, it had a lot more story when they introduced that, and it was a
Right.
much grander play. This is more like, hey, the local play right now is like, who's going to be heir? Because that's the only
Yeah.
thing to talk about in
Yeah.
this world
Right.
currently. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
like the only thing we're talking about really is like the queen dying, right? That's like the
Yeah.
biggest thing going on
Yep.
this week. Um, so that's what the plays are about. Whereas that one in Bravos around like everything happening in the Seven Kings, because that shit is off the chain right now. Like,
Yeah.
more drama than you can deal with.
Right.
But yeah, and I also feel like Otto would not expect this to come from Rhaenyra. Like, he just does not expect her to have
No.
such a strong hand here.
Yeah.
He's always underestimated her, and that's just where he kind of just is lazy too on his part. It's just like, oh, where could this possibly go wrong? Oh, Rhaenyra is gonna like come after you if it's
Yeah.
not Damon. Like, one of these dragons are gonna like burn you, bro.
Right. For sure. For sure. Yeah, yeah, it's just a great move on Rhaenyra for such a young girl to pull out such a card like that and really set herself up a lot better than she was while he was on the small council.
And
And
once again, so well acted by her. Like,
oh,
when
so good.
he
Yeah.
opens it up, like, listen, like, read this dagger. Things are important. Like,
Yeah.
it's acted so well that she's like, okay, yeah, you got a point.
Right.
Like, I'm making things like messy.
Yeah.
I'm still the heir. You would have. I like these lines too in this episode where it's like, you would have, this would happen otherwise, but it's not. Where she's like, you would have Aegon named heir. He's like, yes, I totally would because I'm so pissed right now.
Yeah.
But that's not what's happening. Again, I'm going to repeat myself. You're the heir, and
Right.
I'm tripling down on this at this point.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so this is like the second episode where he doubles down on hear the air. Then we get the the big zinger here at the end, um, where the king summons the hand to the council chamber, and we get very, very good exposition here from the king.
Yes.
And this is where we talked about this already, basically, but he was very just questioning, like, Otto, you became hand after my dad died of some weird explosive belly, like his
Yeah.
gut burst, and he died. Completely healthy person, and you were named then hand after that. You know, I dearly miss my father, and I realize, you know, in my mourning of my then wife, how well placed Alicent was for my
Yeah.
grieving self to come out of that. And that's a strong claim right there in itself. It's like, oh, I'm totally going to call you out on the fact that Alicent was conveniently right where she needed to be
Right.
in my
It's
most
his,
vulnerable time.
yeah, like his eyes are open. It's a little jarring that he didn't see this earlier, or maybe he did and he just fell in love with her and it was too
Out
late.
of convenience.
Yeah, it
And
might
I
have been
think
out of
he
convenience.
was also in denial about Otto. I think
Right.
he's not stupid, but he's also not, he's going to trust Otto to an extent. But now he was placed between kind of Rhaenyra and like continuously trusting Otto, and the clear agenda that's just more and more clear from his
Yeah.
front
And
without any care to hide it.
it's cool to see because in earlier episodes he called Otto like I think maybe talking to Damon like he's
Yeah.
more honorable than you'll ever be or whatever.
Yep.
So it's cool to see that the blinders are off finally on Otto. He overplayed his hand. He went too far, and it's really cool to see him kind of try to backtrack on a lot of the stuff. Like you love Allison, she loves you. Like it's
Yeah.
cool, bro. Like it's totally cool. I didn't have anything to do with it, even though we as the viewer know he absolutely did because we've seen it. But
Yeah.
now the king knows that as well. And
Yeah.
it's
And
not you can't have a guy by your side that's gonna do that kind of shit to you. You know what I mean? Especially in a
right.
position of power.
Yeah. And I just like calling him lazy because he did not need to do that himself. Like he should have made sure that information, if he should have let that unravel itself. Whereas like the
Yes.
king then finds out she was at a brothel, he confronts her, they get in a fight. Instead, he threw himself at the very front of this whole thing, and therefore all eyes just turned to him. Like, why are
I
you bringing
mean,
this up? Like, what's the deal?
why wouldn't you though? It's worked every other time that he's done it
Exactly.
probably. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
He's had no consequences to anything that's happened before, so why would he now? But I do agree with you, but he's not the kind of person that's
Right.
going to take something that makes Aegon look much 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 better and pass it off to somebody else to tell the king. Like he wants to be the one to deliver to get into the good graces of the king, right? Unfortunately for him, turned out quite the opposite and he got into
Yeah.
the bad graces of the king. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's on character for him. Like he's
No,
just
yeah,
that
it is.
the high level dude that's been playing this game for a while. He doesn't need to hide shit. He doesn't need to twist it around too much. He's confident. He's overconfident, cocky
Yeah.
in his delivery of some of this stuff.
Yeah. He's like, it worked when there wasn't social media. Why is everyone
Yeah,
so on to me now? Like
right.
everyone talks to each other. Damn it.
Yeah.
Uh, and also, I mean, also Allison isn't helping him either anymore.
No, I
In
think
this
she's
case,
pissed it. I think she's pissed at
yeah,
him, to be honest with you.
yeah,
She looked shocked after learning, and I don't think it was because of learning what Rhaenyra did. I think it was
no,
because it was her father that was the one that ratted her out.
yeah. It was the delivery of the information and like how just blind he was to being okay with saying that.
Yeah,
Because from her position as like queen and like a very Tyrion tone, like there are certain things you do and don't do, and like one thing you don't do is directly call into question the pureness of, or like the
right.
maidenness of the princess and heir to the throne
Yeah.
so lightheartedly from like some rumor from the street rat. club. It's like, that
Yeah.
was just rude, bro. Like, you're causing problems, and then that
Right.
was too obvious. Yeah, and I maybe to some degree, Allison also doesn't one want to further herself into this precarious situation her father's placed her in. Whereas, like, her children, her now being a mother, probably isn't the best thing to have Aegon become heir, because that puts a target on his head, and she probably would rather have a living son than like the king's son.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you I kind of want to make a prediction that Aegon's going to die sooner rather than later.
As a
Maybe
child,
it, maybe as a child, maybe
10-year
even
old.
in this season. We'll see. We'll see. It just feels, I don't know. Maybe that's the whole war is Alicent trying to get her son on the throne. That might be it. But it feels like too easy of a thing to take out of the equation for the other
Yeah,
side. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And I know that when I read a book on the War of the Roses, and I think I remember this correctly, because there was a baby that was murdered like in its crib because it was going
Mm.
to ascend to the throne. So yeah, we'll see. I think this baby's going to die at some point as a kid. Like he's
Well,
done. Poison something.
Balerion or whatever, they air for a day. Like, he technically died in his crib, kind of.
Right.
He didn't
True.
really make it that long.
Yeah, he didn't quite make it to the crib.
Speaking of early deaths, the very last scene here is the Grand Maester delivering basically a morning after tea
Yeah.
to Rhaenyra. So even if old Christian Cole and her had a child brewing in there, doesn't sound like this tea would let
Not
it go
anymore.
much longer.
Yeah.
And this was cool because we get a Rhaenyra seemingly thinking she's out of it, right? In terms of out of the storm, we get one last gesture from the king, like, "Hey, FYI, just in case, here's this
Right.
tea." Because
Yeah.
I'm not going to believe really what any of you assholes are saying at this point. So
Yeah.
just drink this tea, and let's just really make sure.
So do you think the king's gonna like keep this under wraps? This whole situation? Like he
Y-
has to, right?
Yeah. So now it's like kind of a question of like, does Laenor know about like the potential of like mischief behavior going on,
Right.
or I'd say hmm I would say generally it's going to be common knowledge of what happened that night, or at least the allegations made, but they will swear up and down that nothing happened, it was fine.
Yeah.
She was just really with Damon. It's Damon's fault, let's blame Damon. Good
Right.
target. Blame Damon, she's fine, close call. um Hand got the axe because he was talking loose with the lips there on the gossip trail. So I think it's going to be common knowledge that something happened. So whether or not people want to believe it or not, maybe it'll be like a throwback in later episodes where it's like someone calls her a whore and she like burns them alive. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Do
I
you
think it'll be referenced and used against her later on.
I think it will
So
too.
I
Yeah.
think it'll be common knowledge.
Where's Otto go from here?
Man, Otto has to go back to Old Town
Think, yeah.
to attempt to live here if Damon doesn't find him first.
Right.
So I wonder if this could be a point in time where we start to see more of the kingdoms. It would be cool if we did get some Old Town with Otto there.
That would be really cool, yeah.
If Damon actually goes back to the Reach,
Yeah.
and hangs out with his wife, like, what has she been doing all these years?
Right,
Because
right. Yeah. Super odd. She's only been mentioned, right? He's
Braun's
obviously not into her.
no,
So, yeah, it would be cool to see that. I don't know if we're going to. I kind of feel like as much as like I said earlier, as much as I want to see Old Town become a crucial part of the story, I just don't think Otto's making it out of the capital,
yeah.
bro. Like I think he's dying. Maybe
Well, in
this
that
episode.
so time jump, yay or nay? Like, what's the time jump on the next episode? We barely got a year out of this last one. Are we
Yeah, I
still on the
mean,
heels of this drama, or are we going to jump forward a little bit?
we're definitely going to jump forward for sure. I don't think it's going to be that big of a time jump. We're going to need a little bit because we need to get the Valerians back in King's Landing. There's a lot of stuff that's got to go on.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, there's no reason to think that we won't have a time jump. We've had one every episode so far.
True.
So I don't think it's going to be like years. I think it'd be like this one, a little bit shorter. Year, maybe
Okay.
6
Yeah.
months.
Yeah, I feel like we're in a little bit of a critical point in the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, because definitely it all kind of has to like pop off before we get like, well, no, we have to time jump. Then like some people pop off, like the king. King has to die after a time jump. Basically,
Yeah.
he's gonna die after the big time jump.
Yeah, I think that the more that I think about it, it has to make sense that he makes it to through the time jump
Hmm.
because otherwise the throne's going to be vacant for way too long. It wouldn't make much sense.
Yeah, I just don't know what.
Unless it is King dies, Aegon ascends the throne, and then it's a war to get the throne back.
Baby
Rhaenyra,
Aegon, though,
baby Aegon, yeah,
aka
dude,
Alicent,
yeah. I
Queen
mean,
Mother.
yeah, crazier stuff's happened.
Yeah.
I mean, you think that this kid is, and I don't think we see him in this episode, right?
Well, okay. No, we don't. We get what I assume to be his younger brother because he's like a 3-year-old now. So we don't see him in this
Well, I think
episode.
I think the second one is a girl, I believe. The second the baby is a girl. I could be wrong.
Yeah. But
But
okay, so what about the event that Otto makes the time jump because the king dies and then Alicent, Otto, and like basically the High Towers make the play for the
that
throne.
yeah, that would be ideal for me because I love Otto and I really like his character. I don't want him to die this quickly, but granted, it is Game of Thrones and we have not gone very I mean, we've had no major deaths so far, right? Besides the crab
Crab
feeder.
feeder.
Yeah.
He died. Rip.
And that's it. So it's coming at some point. Like we have to remember this is a George R.R. Martin story that we're talking about here.
This is true. And well, this really is George R. R. Martin histories. So maybe we
Yeah.
just naturally get less deaths because it's the histories. But
Yeah.
Corliss, but we will get the Valerian wedding, I really hope.
Yeah, I
So
think so.
that's right. We talked about that. So hopefully it's just like a year jump, much like this last one. We get a nice big royal wedding. And it's just kind of like mostly intrigue.
Yeah.
But we also know the Valerians are out there making moves on the high seas. So it would be interesting to even see the king approach that gap with the Valerians at this point. Like, hey, guys, marry my daughter.
Yeah, I
We
think we
cool?
have that's a good point. Maybe we don't maybe we are right off the heels of this one because we do have to have some sort of interaction with the king and Corliss over the marriage proposal. We're not just going to jump immediately right to the wedding, I wouldn't think.
Yeah.
But this is very important, I think, because this would, if they do get married, which I think they are definitely going to, this firmly puts Corliss and the Valerians on Rhaenyra's side moving forward, I
Yes.
would think, right?
Yeah.
For the
Marry
remainder of the series, probably.
all the
So,
dragons.
yeah, bad spot for the other side. Yeah, they don't have it. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
Very good point.
and Damon's interesting though too because he always yields to Rhaenyra all the time. Like even in
Yeah.
the brothel, like she started to take control of that situation and it intimidated him and he yielded, right?
Yes.
So is he just going to be the wild card supporting like warrior of just like death and doom on her side? Does he somehow contend her? I think he jumps around in
Yeah.
his allegiance.
Do
But
you think, I mean, we're going to have to get more Targaryens in this story at some point. Am I wrong in thinking this? Because if everything is lining up the way I think it's lining up, and you just said it, all the dragons are literally going to be on one side of this war. unless
Yeah.
Aegon. You can assume Aegon and the other kid will probably be dragon riders, right?
Yeah, so this is the other reason why I guess that validates more of a time jump and just getting
Yeah.
those younger actors out of there. I mean, I can't believe they're going. I mean, technically, well, no, did they already age Lenor, or is that the same actor?
I think he was aged. Yeah, I think
He has a new
he already
actor.
aged. Yeah, because wasn't he way younger when we first saw him? Like he
Yeah, he
was,
was way younger.
unless there's another son. Maybe he's like the older son. I don't know.
Yeah, because there's anyway. He those both get new actors. Both those children of Corliss's children both get new actors in Alicent and Rhaenyra. No one else does.
Right.
So those four get new actors. So I imagine, yeah, is there enough time have to jump to where Aegon's able to ride a dragon and spice things up here? Because otherwise, like Damon's
I
got to
would
be a
think so.
wild. Damon can be a wild card. He can be his own like third wheel to this card game. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
there's gonna be a
maybe. I
lot of
think he's
dragons
going
between the
right. It's lopsided, dragon wise, man.
yeah.
It's very lopsided. So there's got to be
Unless
a wild card out there somewhere that would side with Alicent and Aegon, and
mm, you know what? Maybe the whole Laenor thing doesn't actually happen. And
maybe
like
not.
that's like
Yeah,
maybe that's the trickery that happens and it's actually Damon and Rhaenyra
yeah.
like lock it in and it's them. Valerian's pissed off as always because they get the short end of every deal.
That would definitely balance it out because it's the way we're sitting now. If Rhaenyra and the Valerian kid get
Yeah, there's no
married,
way she marries Laenor then.
we've got the dragons on that side. We've got the biggest navy on that side.
Yep.
And then we just have the crown over here.
Yep.
Right?
We got
There's
a
no
Cersei
dragons.
and King's Landing situation.
Yeah. Interesting. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I don't think the Laenor thing's happening.
I mean, it is called the Dance of the Dragon, so you have to assume that at least the other side has at least one fucking dragon,
And
like
so
at
far,
least one.
yeah. So I don't know if like 10-year-old Aegon goes and finds the big dragon that's hiding out there, and he just gets like the biggest one, and everyone else has like five smaller
5
ones,
little ones. Yeah.
and
Yeah, we'll
like that
see.
one just eats something,
Yeah, we know that bigger one's
eats
coming.
Laenor and
So,
his dragon.
yeah. Super
Boy,
interesting.
oh boy.
Didn't even think about it now
See?
that yeah,
There's so much left to know.
there is. And I can't wait to learn it.
And I'm really liking the time jumps though too, because like
I am too, yeah.
it lets enough stuff go by to where
Right.
it's just like the next big thing, which is
Yeah.
really cool
And
and
I've
different
heard
pacing from Game of Thrones, where Game of Thrones is very like
focus next.
week
Yeah.
to week, day to day,
Yeah.
next, linear, and don't miss anything in between. Like there's no room for like, hey, just pretend all this stuff happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that once the war pops off, though, we're probably the time jump thing is going to be done. I think this is just the build up, right? We've got to tell a lot. We got to tell a 15-year story here for the build up to this war. But I had a thought, and now I totally lost it. That's all right. Go ahead. I lost it.
Nope, that's all I have.
Well, I got.
It's kind of I think there's a lot to look forward to in this series, and they're not dropping the ball yet. Like you said, probably one of your favorite episodes. Definitely a fresh episode, different pace, has its own very fun elements to it, and they're able to dial it way in, but somehow keep it like really, really open ended.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I was gonna say, I keep hearing a lot of people complaining that they think this show needs more action. Like every review that I read on this episode was like, "Oh, it's still lacking action." I'm like, "Are we watching a different fucking show?" Yeah, like there was not. I mean, yeah, you had. I think the problem is people are remembering
no dragons,
right? People are remembering season 7 and 8 of Game of Thrones, where it was like high level action all the time.
They forget season 1 of Game of Thrones, where like they're literally just a
detective story. Yeah, it's just a detective story.
It's just Ned like running around like the city, like opening books and like talking to like blacksmiths.
Right. So yeah, I don't think this show needs more action, man. I think what we've gotten so far has been great.
This is like the one episode that has the lightest amount of action,
Yeah,
and it was
but you
still
need
like
that.
pretty adventurous and
Yeah, it's up there.
intrigue to the max. Like, sorry,
Right.
can't have
Give me
dragons
the
melting
end.
stuff.
Yeah, give me the intrigue before you give me the fighting.
They can't just shoehorn a bunch of battles into a time of peace.
Right. Right.
I think we're lucky we got the whole
Stepstone thing.
Stepstone
Yeah.
thing. Like, that was just like a nice little bonus. Like, hey, here's a little bit of dragon fire for you.
Yeah. Trust me, I believe you're gonna get a shit ton of action out of this series eventually. We just got to get to that point. Believe me. We're
Yeah,
dealing with like a ton of dragons here. We're gonna get a lot of action, I assure you.
there's a whole section of King's Landing that has to disappear,
Right. Yeah.
like a huge chunk.
Yes. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. Shout out to Dad the Cap for the intro and outro music. They slap for sure. Love it.
Absolutely.
Go check out showboysmedia.com. Always fun stuff there. And also go subscribe on YouTube and catch up on all our past content. We are hitting hard on the gaming content here. We usually do that when Mike leaves for some reason. Me and Chad just like default to gaming talk. And Mike's back this week, and we're going to be breaking down Disney 23 Expo as well as Ubisoft Forward. And me and Chad, I'm so happy Chad's here on the Assassin's Creed train just in time. You played Origins just in time.
Just in time, bro. Yeah.
To be so excited for Samurai Assassin's Creed.
Oh,
And it's also like you like willed it upon the franchise when you played Origins. Like, I love this game. And it was just like, here you go, Chad.
Yeah, here you go. You're a weeb. Take it. Finally. 15 years of waiting for this damn franchise.
Last weeb we needed. We were waiting for that last weeb's
that
like
one weeb.
Here it is.
Love it.
Anyway, we're out. See ya Thursday at 9 p.m. I just had to get this in. So this episode's going to have a after outro bit, but double meaning to the episode's name. I believe Christian Cole is also a king of the Narrow Sea.